Me quito de aquí y empezamos a maestro. Ay. Espera. Ya no puedo mover mucho más mi laptop. No, mire. O sea, como que el chiste es más que la vean que la escuchen. O sea, sí que la vean, ¿verdad? Pero sobre todo que la escuchen. Creo que se está... Maestros foráneos pueden confirmar que ven pantalla compartida y aparte la cámara de donde estoy hablando. Sí. Muy bien. Aquí una de las autoras del libro. Los dejo con ella. Solo corroboro que sí esté grabando. Sí está grabando. Adelante si gusta.
Muy bien. Buenos días. Buenos días.
Buenos días. No estaría, perdone, antes de empezar, más a gustosito allá para que nos veas a nosotros y no sientas que tengas que estar volteando a los dos lados.
Yo diría que le invitamos al escritorio.
Al escritorio,
Sí,
no
gusta.
pasa nada. Es un trabajo, pues.
Sí, hasta puedes tomar así.
Bueno, pues.
Tiene que estar por
Si así ya la van a ver, la vemos grabando todo.
Bueno, están muy lejanos, pero más, estarían más lejanos los de Puerto Vallarta y Ocotlán. Gracias por recibirnos, gracias por este tiempo que están dedicando a conocer esta serie. Algunos ya me conocen. Sentí súper bonito encontrar caras amigables después de muchos años. Para quienes no me conocen, mi nombre es Isa Tirado. Soy egresada de la licenciatura en docencia del inglés como lengua extranjera de la Universidad de Guadalajara hace muchos años. Y pues aquí sigo en la docencia, que es mi pasión, me encanta. Y antes de empezar de lleno, me gustaría que se presentaran todos, también para conocer los nombres de todos. Si me hacen el favor, empezando por aquí.
Soy la maestra Beatriz Arias de SECAT 15 de aquí.
Yo, Beatriz Lagarde, también de SECAT 15.
Bien.
Mi nombre es María Dolores Castillo, también Lidile, del SECAT 161.
Muy bien, Dolores.
Mucho gusto, soy Javier Correa de Secati 161.
Yo soy Ana Serrano de Secati 56.
Yo soy Manuel González de Secati 97.
Y yo soy Lilia del Secati 190.
Y el de Leticia Rodríguez del 51.
Muy bien, ¿y por allá?
Yo soy Manuel Ruiz de Editorial Keep Reading.
Compañero. Y yo, pues Néstor Hernández. También de Editorial Keep Reading.
Sí, y Rosy, ¿en dónde estás tú? ¿Eres?
No te escuchamos.
Ah,
No, dile.
sí,
No
no
te
se
puedes
escucha.
ver.
No se escucha.
En mi compu sí debería de oírse. Creo.
Dijo que era de...
No sé.
Ella es de Ocotlán.
Ah, es que tiene su micrófono apagado. Ah, Rosy está en Ocotlán.
Ya se está escuchando, sí. Bajito, pero se escucha.
Sí.
Sí.
Y Ángel, Puerto Vallarta.
Así es, Ángel Avilés, Secati 93.
Muy bien, pues gracias, bienvenidos de nuevo. Y el objetivo de esta pequeña charla es compartirles un poco la metodología que hay detrás de la serie. Vamos a comenzar con un panorama muy general y después entramos ya un poquito más a los detalles. De todos modos, no creo que ocupemos una hora, así que podrán irse temprano, descansar. ¿No?
No,
Sí,
¿Hay más actividades?
no podemos ir temprano, tenemos que esperar, ¿no?
No sé.
Sí, ya son las 11. Sí, termina.
Bien, pues la serie fue originalmente concebida por Carol Leslie, una de las autoras, y ella fue la que creó el mapa pues metodológico de la serie, que tú eres el que la maneja. Bien, una más. Sí. Lo que se quiso hacer fue integrar los tres sistemas. Ay, creo que lo voy a hacer en inglés. ¿Está bien? No, hasta ahorita me cayó el 20. So the series integrates the 3 language systems and the 4 language skills. And the idea was precisely to favor this balanced development of the language. Sometimes writing is neglected or pronunciation is forgotten, and in this case we wanted to make sure that everything was there for us teachers to really pay attention to every single area. Okay, so that's the first characteristic, and then one more. You know about the communicative approach, right? The series is based on the communicative approach, but in addition to that, we wanted to take into consideration what research says about how people learn languages. Carol is very much into research, and so she has studied a lot about how the brain works, and based on that evidence, we decided to include, can you go back, please? There. 2 science principles about learning. The first one, I think you're very familiar with activation of prior knowledge. And this is maybe something very simple, but it has proven to be an excellent tool in learning, because we have what students know, what we tell them, and if we make that connection, the new information makes better sense or more sense to students. So you will find that as a characteristic in the activities. And another one is to allow students to engage more cognitively. Instead of like spoon-feeding students, especially when it comes to grammar, the objective is to encourage self-discovery. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to browse through the books and pay attention to how grammar is presented. Well, we'll get into that, but this is a characteristic also, based again on learning science principles. And so we see learning as a social activity. For that reason, the communication approach is also basic, because we believe that students start with us as language learners, but they need to transition to become language users. All right? So the idea is to make everything work towards a communicative purpose. And that's why it says there, grammar is not an end, it's only a means. And the same with vocabulary. Okay? Regarding the skills, sometimes, let's say for example, we have a reading and students read and answer questions and we move on. And we didn't want that, because reading comprehension is more than just reading and answering questions. So for every skill we have a very complete learning sequence. We start with preparation, like the pre-skill activity, the while skill activity, that is focused on developing sub-skills. So in the case of reading, again, it's not only read because of the sake of reading, but students are going to read to find the general idea, to discover specific information, to get the details, to order the information. They need to read with a purpose, to make the activities more meaningful and relevant. And it's not only a written passage from the book that we need to go over and then move on. They need to get something out of that, okay? So the pre-skill, the while skill, and then the post-skill to wrap up the learning sequence with a follow-up that allows students to reuse the content from the writing or the speaking or the reading, whatever, in different ways as a way to strengthen or enhance the learning. And it varies from book to book depending on the level and the topic, but we tried to make sure that all the while activities produced a real outcome. We thought about real life skills. And so, for example, writing is not writing a composition for the teacher and that's it. No. Students need to be given an audience, an objective, a purpose. So you see, for example, they're going to write a biography, which is something real. Or they're going to write a movie review. They're going to read an article or a blog or an email. In speaking, we have them giving opinions or discussing a topic or participating in a survey, something again that resembles real life, okay? And in the case of listening, most of the listening talks are about conversations related to the unit topic, okay? So they have this input from the audios. And okay, and this is an example. Well, you can't really read anything, but this is an example of a writing. And if you see, it's a whole process. It's not only write about this and that's it. Students first get a sample. They're gonna write a movie review. They first read a movie review. And then they analyze the movie review. What are the sections? What does it consist of? Yes? And then they have a preparation task. You're gonna write your own movie review, answer these questions. And then with those questions, finally, they write. But it doesn't stop there. If you remember the writing process, the very final step is publish. So whenever possible, we want students to publish their work, at least for their classmates to look at it. And this is when we use the app. So I'm not writing only for the teacher. I'm writing also for my peers. Okay? So as you can see, we try to really engage students, cognitively speaking, for them to have a very active role. We don't want passive students. Well, you are passive with me right now, just listening, but this is not what we want in the classroom. Yeah, students sitting down, listening to the teacher, explaining and explaining and
Teachers are never a good
explaining.
example of good students. We're the worst, I guess.
But if you make the final decision to adopt this series, I'll come back and we'll have a more dynamic workshop. And you're gonna do all the work. Yeah, right now this is just a small introduction, yes. But the idea is that students have to think, recall, infer, guess, share, make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. And in that way we kind of empower students. It's a way to activate what, I don't know if you've, what's his name? This man that talks about learning a lot. I forgot his name. I'll remember in a minute. He talks about students learning power. And he says, students have that. We need to activate it. We need to use it for their advantage. So let's make sure that they are really involved and engaged. And this is why we try to have activities with a purpose that will make the learning more meaningful. All right? This example is from a reading. So before the reading, we have vocabulary pre-teaching.
I think this is in the book if you want to. It's unit what?
It's unit 1, no, unit 2,
Lesson 2.
lesson 2.
But it's book 1?
Yeah,
Book 1, yes.
So it's page
36.
36? Thank you.
Yeah.
Alright.
So it's vocabulary pre-teaching. Again, this works as a pre-reading activity. Students are going to read. The reading has this vocabulary. Well, they need to get to know what that vocabulary means. And then they have the reading. And in the reading, they need to identify specific elements. That's their while reading activity. And as a post-reading, I don't see it. Well, when we work with reading, there are 2 types of questions. I don't know if you probably remember this, like type 1, the ones that focus on the content, and type 2, the ones that focus on the edges, like who the author is, what type of reading is it, what's the objective of the reading. So in this case, you have a mixture of those 2 types of questions. In this case, like what type of text it is, where you can find it, and why, because this is also information for students to decide how to approach a reading. In real life, we approach text in different ways depending on what it is and what we need it for. And if it's an email, we read it in one way. If it's an article, we read it in a different way, right?
It's a restaurant menu.
Exactly.
It's a different way.
Or the schedules at an airport. So that's why from time to time we included type 2 reading questions. Okay, that's a speaking. Can you see it? Well, no.
Could you tell us what I think it's also from the first book.
I think this is book 2,
Oh,
or can you check? It's unit 4, hobbies and interests.
maybe it is.
It's book 1.
Yeah,
Ah,
hobbies and
still
interests.
book
What
1.
lesson is it?
It's unit 4. It's a speaking. Do you have the books over there also in Ocotlán and Puerto Vallarta?
And they don't have it at the
They
moment.
have
Ah.
a tema.
Oh.
What page is it at?
Oh.
80 something.
90.
90?
90.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
91?
Lesson 2.
Are the pages visible enough for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, they don't have a problem. It's just a projector, but they
Ah.
But
they
They can
they
see
can
it.
see them perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this speaking, it's a survey again, but students prepare. So you're gonna see this very famous controlled, semi-controlled, and free practice, right? It's also part of the series, and we start with controlled speaking right there, by answering specific questions with only yes, no, and then they report to a classmate, and then they recycle and create their own questions and have more interaction with peers to answer the questions. And And this one finishes with another, can we move page?
It's a very long sequence. I like that.
Yes.
Many steps.
One more?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then they go back to a little bit of semi-control as a way to like reinforce, okay? We let them free and then we come back again a little bit to reinforce before moving on. Not all the speaking activities have this sequence. It varies. And that's another characteristic that you'll notice. We stick to the methodology, but we vary the activities. And as a way to avoid a lot of prediction and boredom, like again this and again this. No, you students will find surprises here and there. And I must confess, I think sometimes you'll find tasks that seem to be a bit too challenging for the level. One thing that you should know is that the series was thought for false beginners, not true beginners, okay? And because we are thinking about false beginner, there is a lot of
There's a lot more of both beginners than beginners, no?
activation of prior knowledge. But if you find it too demanding, then our job as teachers is to do the corresponding scaffolding, right? To make sure that we don't lose them, we don't frustrate them. And in the teacher's guide, you'll find options to do that, okay? Any questions or comments so far?
So far, everything's great.
Okay. This is an example of a listening. Again, a preparation for the listening before the actual audio is to talk about oneself. This is, by the way, one more feature I like to highlight, that is personalization of the language, okay? So in this case, students first answer these questions about themselves.
Page 72, guys, if you'd like.
Same book?
Yep.
Ah,
Thank you.
thank you. So first they answer about themselves, they get familiar with the information they're going to listen to, that's the preparation task, and then they listen to the audio and answer the information about Lisa, okay? And then they make this comparison and move to personalization. So it's again more than the actual skill by itself, but it comes like in this package, okay, that we unfold little by little with students. So that's an example of a listening. And then one more. In addition to the 4 skills, well, one of the skills is speaking, of course, but in order to emphasize the speaking and emphasize the communicative approach that we wanted to embed in the series, we have this section that is called Use It Now, and it's focused on communicative functions. So it's kind of a second speaking section, but it's labeled with a very specific function, and we have examples here: introducing oneself, making comparisons, going shopping, asking for permission, ordering food. So something again that we do in real life, you will find it in every single unit. Okay, so you have your speaking, and in addition to the speaking, you have your use it now section to make it even more obvious, all right? The speaking purpose. And that's an example. This is about giving opinions. That's the communicative function of this example. I don't know if you have it there. It's unit 4, but page 90, I think. 90? I don't know if it's in your book or it's book 2. I'm very sorry. Okay. Well, this is very similar to the writing. Remember, we saw that students first see an example. So they read and listen to examples of people giving opinions before they actually have to do the same. They students, of course. Okay. And
It's 90 on the book 3.
book 3.
Thank you.
Right, so did you find it?
Oh, yeah.
Because I saw Anna looking for it in book
Ah, yeah.
3.
Give your opinion.
Welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you take a minute to go quickly over the whole sequence and you tell me what steps you find. Can you go back?
Can I look at the book with you?
Page 9.
I got it.
I know.
Which is yours?
Actually, which were mine.
19, but
So you're gonna listen to the opinions first,
Mm-hmm.
the sample of the opinion. You're gonna analyze, and then you're gonna get
So
phrases.
this is for B1 then.
I can't read
Nice
them.
grammar too.
Yeah, big one.
Because the section is use it now, so this is like for like more practical use of the language.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's similar to like the ID in action like skills, right?
Mhm. Okay.
Okay. Well, and that's about the 4 skills, including use it now, which is, it's not a 5th skill, but it's embedded there. And we move on to look now at the systems. If you can help me now. Okay, so it's grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. For grammar, we always start with something called active grammar, which is presenting the grammar structure in a mini context instead of going directly into a grammar box. So it's more a combination of the inductive approach and the self-discovery approach, because in some cases, again, it varies, yes, depending on the structure, but in some cases we have students analyze that mini context for them to be aware and conscious of what the structure is used for and what it consists of. Okay? So again, it's not spoon feeding, but it's like more dynamic, mentally speaking.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we have the grammar box, but the grammar box is not like static because it has blanks that students need to complete based on the answers to the questions, to the previous questions. Okay? Like to make sure that they got it. And of course, we're there to clarify questions, to make sure everything is clear. If necessary, you can move at that moment to the grammar reference at the end of the book, if you think it is necessary, right? But that's the way we handle grammar. And then we have our controlled practice exercises and semi-controlled practice exercises, and the sequence continues that way. In the case of vocabulary, we usually start by checking how much students already know. It's not like a presentation from zero. We have, for example, the pictures, Can we move on to see an example? No, move forward. Okay, go. Go back. Go back. One more.
There you
Okay, no,
That one, whose shoes?
that one. No,
It's
español. Okay.
no,
Más adelante.
Quiero ver más adelante.
Más adelante. Oh,
ese
ahí.
no.
No,
Menos.
uno
Un poco
más.
antes.
Uno más.
Ese.
Ahí. Gracias. Okay. Yeah, before getting into vocabulary, this is an example of the active grammar. Again, it's mini dialogues in this case, and students need to identify like target points there. And they identify verbs and the pronouns that we're going to focus on. And that's the initial activation.
Which is that page, please?
I can't see it there, but it's
My favorite thing
it's
is I
unit
look
1.
for
It should be from book 2, I think.
It's not in one.
No, it's lesson.
Somebody else has two. Or it's in book section.
Yeah, book
Unit
2.
1.
Book 2,
Alright.
unit 1, lesson 3.
I do not find
Whose
16.
shoes are these?
Page 16.
Ah, thank you. Listen and circle the words in blue. They, them, she or her. I mean, he, her. Look at the word.
So they start like they are introduced to the object pronouns, but making this initial distinction with personal pronouns. They need to differentiate to start thinking about, oh, these are different, right? So this is our active grammar, mini dialogues, a mini context, and from that starting point, then we move on to the grammar box and the
Because,
explanation.
Like in exercise 2, it's already telling them what they need to know. Like object pronouns go after, so they already know what they are, or they go after, and then on the box, they, okay. Like they can learn by themselves even before the box. Or have like this idea of, okay, it's this word that goes after this type of word. I like that a lot.
Yeah, this is the self-discovery
Mhm.
part we mentioned. However, we are aware of the fact that students learn in different ways,
Yeah.
and some others like to be told or to be taught more explicitly.
Especially the old ones, no?
Yeah.
The kind of systems that we have, like all kind of students, because sometimes we got people of 60, some others of 18, and you know, this is the way they try to learn all the time, and like they like to be told everything. And now
Yes.
this is another one. I would like to see. Give us the whole information. Give us the whole chart. You know, so they have no idea what
Yes,
education is
and if we
like.
don't do it,
They get
they
mad.
yes, and they see us that you don't know how to teach.
Exactly.
That's not the way I learn.
No, you're
you know.
way too young. I think you need to learn a little bit more. I've been told that. Only because you're way
So.
too, I'm almost 50.
No?
So, regardless of what the book offers, never forget two things. One, your students, how they like to learn, and two, your own teaching style.
Mhm.
So, you need to really adapt and make the best out of your book, your students' learning preferences, and your teaching style. But beware of something. This is something I will never forget. I saw a workshop with Carol Lethaby in the virtual TESOL, the annual conference in the US, about evidence-based research on learning. And she said, many times our assumptions about good teaching are wrong. And it was like, it hurt. But she was like, And we don't know. We're very unconscious, but many times we are wrong. So we need to unlearn. Unlearn techniques or approaches that don't work to learn the ones that do work. And in order to become aware of what doesn't work, we need to be open to continue learning. And don't stay with what we learned 20 something years ago. Okay. So be flexible with the series. Like if self-discovery is not working for your students because of their age or because they're too lazy, well, adapt, yes, and change. You have still the grammar box, the grammar reference, and you can use that as a menu, right? Okay. Then we move on to the example of vocabulary, and as I mentioned earlier,
Book, is this book two?
this
Page
is
60, book two.
oh, wow, you're very
She's
fast.
You're making the class
Which
active.
60, book two, page 60.
Active students.
So it's vocabulary presentation, but if you notice, it starts right away with match the words to the pictures. What does that mean?
Prior knowledge activation.
We are assuming that students come with some knowledge, that it's not like they're blank. And then there are some words that are cognates.
Of course.
And so, well, let's take advantage of that, right?
That's not a cognate manner.
We just know the word.
It's just everyone knows that, no? Everyone knows that.
I don't know
Anyways,
why I don't.
prior knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, using,
Kind of like
as a matter of fact, you will see a little bit of Spanish, not here in the unit lessons, but in the sections from the end, either the active grammar or the active vocabulary that come at the end. For example, we ask for translation of phrases or translations of cognates, single vocabulary. And Spanish is used as a tool to help students make this connection between their language and English and see how they function differently, but sometimes they share some aspects. So it's a tool. It's used very little, but you will find it there. So don't be scared about that use of Spanish.
It used to be a taboo.
Yes.
It was for a whole bunch of time. In fact, I had a conversation with Carolyn Moore, like, I think like 28 years ago. And I let him know how I am, like, all the time with comparative analysis. And I wanted to make my thesis about a comparative analysis. And she says, if you're sure about this, just make your point and speak up, because this is good. Right now, people are getting into don't speak Spanish at all. And to be honest, I have to confess that I've been using comparative analysis every time I try to care about the way people start learning a language. And I usually make use of comparative analysis, and they're happy about it. I can prove my point now. So I'm always against people who say, no, don't use Spanish at all. And it's like they sataniza, the use of Spanish.
But the tool is perfect.
It's a big advantage between a student and you, because you're a Spanish native speaker, and so they are as well. So I think it's a nice way to take advantage of both. The people that have taught multicultural classes, you can see this big advantage we have among the students and the teachers with both Mexican, Spanish speakers, native, no?
And
so
it's being used more and more in the feed speeches.
Yes.
And more.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar, if you know Paul Seligson is
Oh.
a famous
Side by side?
trainer and author of teaching materials. Paul Seligson has been at the FIT conference talking about the benefits of Spanish in the Mexican classroom. But again, at the end, he is very clear about not overusing it because there are dangers, right?
Like any tool, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You are going to use it, but not all the time.
Because for example, for vocabulary, you're
grammar.
not going to spend like 10 minutes explaining the word like perhaps.
Oh.
And you can say it and then continue on, right? Because
There's been a
everybody
change of
speaks Spanish,
attitude,
you
right?
say the word and that's it. Obviously not using all the class. And you can
Or I
set
think
also that.
even depends, like
Perhaps.
perhaps, and that they'll know.
No,
think
because I
it's
just
also
say it in Spanish and continue my class.
Yeah.
I don't think.
And also depends on the level. Like if you want, like you're in B1, maybe you do want them to figure it out without telling it in Spanish, because
Yes.
that's part of it. But
Right.
yeah, you can use Spanish.
Yes.
I think also you can use it in order to be able to show a function, like the specific function of a structure. No?
Exactly.
And then like a little bit, okay, this is what it is. Like in fact,
In that way, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
You are making this connection between the new and the old,
right?
Yeah.
and it's like, ah,
Yeah. And I think, you know, when I think, for example, this ing that everybody wants to use all the time, the present continuous that I personally hate, because it has been bothering me all my life, no? That people wants to answer right away with ing, everything, every single question. What did you have for breakfast? Sandwiching, they say, no? They just come out with ing. They want to put it everywhere.
Really?
Yeah, and it's like I think they got it so hard because
Because that's what they teach
they
them in secondary
compare.
school.
They compare it. People say ando yendo. They just got that ando yendo yendo. And I thought it's because we have to compare to a structure. That's what I just got this idea of being comparing all the time in the terms that that we can't. No, try to compare the functions of two different structures. I think that's what I get this idea of it, and it works because people really think about ando yendo, and they think ing is super important, no, because of it, and they compare the two functions. That's what I try to compare sometimes on grammar, the function of some structures like present perfect. It's so hard to teach sometimes, and when you try to tell them, this is like this, and this chunk of grammar is like if you say they got it, oh that's right, and then she got it. Yeah, and no, I thought Spanish works definitely.
Yeah.
yes.
As
Okay.
a tool, it's fine.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Yes. Were you able to hear the comments from your peers,
Probably not.
Rosie and Angel? Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we listen clearly.
Oh, very
Oh
good.
wow, that's great.
All
I
right.
thought we might need a microphone. You asked for one, I didn't have one. I'm sorry.
It's our first time.
And then pronunciation. You find it there very evident, so you cannot run away from it. You cannot skip it. And this is because we've seen that many teachers, not here and not you, but in many places, they forget about pronunciation. And they forget about error correction.
Look, if you'd like, book 3,
And
page 68.
you know the books better than me?
We're just looking
Oh, we
at
are
the-
paying attention.
I got my first job. This is past.
So for pronunciation, you will find focuses on ending sounds, word stress, sentence stress, intonation.
Syllables. Right.
Um,
Splitting the syllables.
Okay, yes.
Continue. Go on. No problem. I'm just gonna.
And I
Uh,
say we
we're
were going
fine.
to finish.
No, it's fine.
In the teacher's book or like the manual we're supposed to have online, is there any way to train teachers? Because I have found that many teachers have no idea what phonetics and phonology and all that, these like symbols, phonetic symbols and stuff. They have no idea what that is, and I think that's because sometimes they try to ignore the fact because they have no idea of like the symbols and stuff. So is there any way like for a person who doesn't know anything about any kind of symbol or anything about phonetics and phonology, is there any way that they can be like learning at the same time with the students on the teachers, like trying to find out information in order to teach them?
We don't have anything that specific in the teacher's book.
There's a phonetic chart online.
Yes,
Because like for example, like talking about like
we
the
would
alpha-
need a special course on teaching
Right.
pronunciation.
Yeah, because
That would be lovely.
yeah, I was just like thinking about you said many of the teachers try to ignore the fact, that happens.
And it's because they
many of
don't
them-
feel comfortable because they don't know it. I'm interrupting again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, that many teachers don't pay attention to pronunciation because they don't feel comfortable
Right.
because they don't know enough.
Right. We don't know enough. Sometimes they get insecurity,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. My question is if there is any extra information for teachers about phonetics and
No,
phonology.
no, there isn't.
Oh, okay.
But we could prepare a course if it's required.
That would be nice.
And now, well, we have this advantage of virtual asynchronous materials that could be useful for
Yeah.
those who need it. It could be optional, like I know I'm lacking knowledge, I'm gonna take it. It could be just there, available.
No, that would be
That
great.
would be nice.
That's okay. So different options to focus on pronunciation, okay? And again, it's listening. The steps in pronunciation is first listen to the sound, make sure you are able to identify it before you produce it. And another golden rule in pronunciation, be sure students know what they're saying before they repeat it, right? Because then you, like, the cognitive load goes down and they're ready to practice pronunciation. They need to know what they're saying so that they're not repeating like parrots. Yes. Okay. And with that, we complete the overview of the 3 systems and the 4 skills, which are the core of the series. And we have additional features here and there. It's not like a very systematic sequence or presence, like every lesson you will find this and that. No, it's just here and there when we found it necessary that you have the sections. Don't say this, don't say that, say this. I'll go back to the study skill in a minute. And we've been teachers for how long? Well, so we know what are the most common mistakes the students make, right? In this section, we tried to take those very common mistakes and highlight them to show them and anticipate them to students. And again, as a way to empower them, if I can use that word. And that's the don't say this, don't say that, say this. Okay? Anticipate those mistakes and help students try to avoid them.
And I like how it says we take advantage of common mistakes Spanish speakers make, so it's made for a Spanish speaking audience.
Yes.
That's Spanish coming into the equation again.
And the example we have there is, the first one is with present continuous. When students forget the verb be and they only use the ing form. Okay. So that's one little feature that you will find again here and there. The study skill comes always at the beginning of a unit. Not in every single lesson, just at the beginning of a unit. This is to ideally start implicitly training students to learn better. Okay? Many times our students don't know how to learn. And so the study skill is about learning to learn. Not learning a language, learning to learn. Yes?
Metacognición.
Exactly. Metacognition. And you will find those activities. The study skill is in a yellow box, and the activities that relate to the study skill also come with a yellow background. So for you to do that match when you see it. And you can be explicit about it and tell students. Okay. And then the be careful is very similar to don't say that, say this, because it's a warning. Yeah, it's anticipation, but it's more about making little distinctions. For example, between false cognates and real cognates. Like we have a career, and in Mexico is una carrera de la universidad, and in English it's not. So that's an example of a be careful. A career in English is not una carrera. It's not a degree. Yes? And then the language tips, it's just some additional information in case students need it. And we have an example that we present the alphabet, and the language tip adds, oh, and we have capital letters and small letters. And these are vowels and these are consonants. It's just some mini additional information. It's not crucial, but it's there, it can be useful, yes, from time to time. For example, when talking about pronunciation, we tell students, identify the stressed syllable. And the language tip will explain what a stressed syllable is. Yes? All right. And finally, just in time, the Login Now app, those little gray squares that also come at the margin are the links to the app. So students work in the book and then they have to post in the app. Those are the login app activities, and we see that because, well, now everything happens in the cell phone, right? Many things happen in the cell phone. And we thought, well, why don't we have students use the cell phone also in class instead of using only the book? And let's give them this practice with a device that they're used to using all the time. So that's the objective, like enrich the experience, have them again publish and compare and share with their classmates, and just vary a little bit like instead of writing in their notebook, write in the app. All right, that's to give a little bit of a twist in some activities. And well, we have your typical workbook, yes, for homework, your grammar reference that I mentioned, the active vocabulary, it's extra practice. The active vocabulary has the list of words from the unit and exercises to practice those words. It's additional practice. You have your review units. and also the audio script. That for some students who may struggle more with listening, that they need more training in their listening skills, you can explode the audio scripts in different ways.
Your review.
And the drama,
And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact, keep reading through Nestor, through this email, and then
I have a question. We were checking the materials and they get to B1, right? Sometimes we have a few students who take courses on B2. Do you have any other like series that could be used like
Continuation.
To continue this one? So when they finish this, and if we have, and we are lucky to have students for B2, do you have any other series or? Because I know, I understand the for this. Yeah.
yeah, because this was
Media superior.
yeah, this was
And we are like media superior, estamos como en media superior supuestamente, ¿verdad? A veces estamos en media superior, a veces estamos en básica, pero por verdad de nuestros alumnos somos media superior. Entonces a veces nos llegan grupos buenos que, o sea, siguen, pues sí quisiéramos como saber si ustedes tienen algo que les que pudiéramos continuar con ustedes en caso de que tuviéramos algún grupo que quisiera seguir.
pues de momento no. De momento la serie llega solamente hasta ese nivel.
¿Y alguna otra que ustedes recomendaran?
Lo que podemos hacer ahí es que, bueno, con la autoría, la colaboración de esta serie, Nominal Challenge y las otras que les decía en la primera presentación que estamos elaborando, podríamos seguir editando y hacer una colección para que llegue inclusive, no sé, a C1.
Porque ya ven que a veces hay, por ejemplo, no sé, el Open Mind, ¿no? Que es Open Mind 1, 2 y 3 y luego sigue Mastermind, que es como la siguiente serie, ¿no? O el English ID, que era el que usábamos nosotros, y luego sigue Identities, que era como ya más
En los niveles avanzados.
Sí, como de la misma editorial, si ustedes tuvieran algo así.
Ahorita todavía
no está publicado, pero no estamos cerrados. Se puede seguir escribiendo para llegar a esos niveles que requieran para esos casos especiales, esos grupos.
Sí, ahorita
Sí.
no hay, entonces más bien es.
Si no hay, pero podríamos elaborarlo, tendríamos que ver con los autores, con el área de ediciones, todo, pero sí se puede crear. Afortunadamente somos la editorial.
De hecho, originalmente se pensó llegar hasta B2, pero bueno, ya no son cosas de los autores. Sí se estudió el mercado y se vio pues la necesidad más urgente era hasta B1.
Y es la mayoría. Pues,
sí, porque hasta para titularse en la universidad tienen B1.
Sí.
Y si gusta, maestro, despedirse de los que están en la videollamada, que ya va a terminar.
Gracias a Rosy y Ángel Alfonso por quedarse con nosotros. Gracias por su tiempo. Que tengan muy bonita tarde. Disfruten su periodo vacacional y cualquier duda estamos a la orden.
Esto ya no está grabando. Adelante. Nomás voy a ponerle aquí.